Oh, hi. You thought I was done with the Harry Potter videos. Well, you thought wrong. We're back with some more tales from Tales of Beetle the Bard. Because we can never have enough Wizarding World fairy tales. Now, so far, I have read to you the tale of Babbity Rabbity and her cackling stump, the tale of the three brothers, which is one of my more personal favorites in the story, although Babbity Rabbity in my top 2 favorite stories. And I've also read to you The Wizard and the Hopping Pot. But for today's story, I think we will go with the Warlock's Hairy Heart. Because as we all know, if you have a hairy heart, then you might not live long. Find the page, because I don't have my glasses on. There we go, the Warlock's Hairy Heart. Because I have to read these without my glasses because my webcam likes to put glare from the light, and that does not look professional. So here we go, page 43, the Warlock's Hairy Heart. I have a pop-up on my screen. I hope you cannot see this. It's not fun stuff. It had a bunch of pop-ups on my screen. I don't know why, but we fixed it. There once was a handsome, rich, and talented young warlock who observed that his friends grew foolish when they fell in love. Don't all men fall foolish when they fall in love? Gamboiling and preening, losing their appetites and the dignity. Which doesn't count for me because I have no dignity. The young warlock resolved never to fall prey to such weakness, and employed dark arts to ensure his immunity. One thing we learned in the Wizarding World: don't use the dark arts, especially when one wants to make a Horcrux. I forget I ever said that word, a Horcrux. Unaware of his secret, the warlock's family laughed to see him aloof and cold. Some men are very cold-hearted, but apparently he's cold and hairy-hearted. All will change, the prophesied when a maid catches his fancy. Ah, fair maiden, I see thee. But the young warlock's fancy remained untouched, though many a maiden was intrigued by his haughty mien, and employed her subtle arts to please him. None succeeded in touching his heart, although I think they wanted to touch more than his heart, but we're not going to get on that. We're not going to touch on that. This is a fairy tale, I say. The warlock gloried in his indifference and the sagacity that had produced it. The first freshness of youth waned, and the warlock's peers began to wed, and then to bring forth children. Their hearts must be husk, he sneered inwardly as he observed the antics of the young parents around him, shriveled by the demands of these mewling offspring. Because as we all know, when you have children, you can say goodbye to your money, your mental health, and your hair. Oh, praise be that I'm asexual. And once again he congratulated himself upon the wisdom of his early choice. In due course, the warlock's aged parents died. As with all fairy tales, you have to have someone dying. The son did not mourn them. On the contrary, he considered himself blessed by the demise. Why is he sounding like me and my parents were both still alive? Now he reigned alone in the castle, having transferred his greatest treasure to the deepest dungeon. He gave himself over to a life of ease and plenty. His comfort was the only aim of his many servants. The warlock was sure that he must be an object of immense envy to all who beheld his splendid and untroubled solitude. Fierce were his anger and charging. Therefore, when he overheard 2 of his lackeys discussing their master one day, "He's eavesdropping." But what has he eavesdropped for? The The first servant expressed pity for the warlock, who with all his wealth and power was yet beloved by nobody. But his companion jeered, asking why a man with so much gold and palatial castle to his name had been unable to attract a wife. Could it be his heart? Though words dealt dreadful blows to the listening warlock's pride, he resolved at once to take a wife, and that she would be his wife, and that she would be a wife superior to all others. She would possess astounding beauty, exciting envy and desire to every man who beheld her. I think he found the Kardashians. He's only forgetting to mention idiocy. She would spring from magical lineage, so that their offspring would inherit outstanding magical gifts. So he wants to marry a witch. Nothing wrong with that. And she would have wealth at least equal to his own, so that his comfortable existence would be assured, in spite of additions to his household. It might have taken the warlock 50 years to find such a woman, yet it so happened that the very day after he decided to seek her, a maiden answering his every wish arrived in the neighborhood to visit her kinfolk. Now, she sounds like she over here from West Virginia now, over there to see that kinfolk now. She was a witch of prestigious skill and possessed of much gold. Her beauty was such that it tugged at the heart of every man who set eyes on her, of every man, that is, except one. Except one. The warlock's heart felt nothing at all. Nevertheless, she was the prize he sought, so he began to pay her court. I do wish I had my glasses on so I could see this better. All who noticed the warlock's change in manners were amazed, and told the maiden that she had succeeded where 100 had failed. The young woman herself was both fascinated and repelled by the warlock's attentions. She sensed the coldness that lay behind the warmth of his flattery, and had never met a man so strange and remote. Her kinfolk, however, deemed theirs a most suitable match, and eager to promote it, accepted the warlock's invitation to a great feast in the maiden's honor. The table was laden with silver and gold, bearing the finest wines and the most sumptuous foods. Minstrels summoned on silk-stringed lutes, and sang of a love their master had never felt. The maiden sat upon a throne beside the warlock, who spake low, employing words of tenderness, and had stolen from the poets without any idea of their true meaning. Plagiarism. The maiden listened, puzzled, and finally replied, "You speak well, warlock, and I would be delighted by your attentions if only I thought you had a heart." The warlock smiled and told her that she need not fear on that score. Bidding her follow, he led her from the feast and down to the locked dungeon where he kept his greatest treasure. Here, in an enchanted crystal casket, was the warlock's beating heart. You were wondering what his most prized treasure was, weren't you? Don't lie to me, I know what you were thinking. Since long disconnected from eyes, ears, and fingers, it had fallen prey to beauty, or to a musical voice, to the feel of silken skin. The maiden was terrified by the sight of it, for the heart was shrunken and covered in long black hair. "Oh, what have you done?" she lamented. "Put it back where it belongs, I beseech you." She beseeches him. Seeing that this was necessary to please her, the warlock drew his wand, unlocked the crystal casket, sliced open his own breast. Get your head out of the gutter. And replaced the hairy heart in the empty cavity where it had once occupied. "Now that you are healed, and I will know true love," cried the maiden. She embraced him. The touch of her soft white arms, the sound of her breath in his ear, the scent of her heavy pierced the newly awakened heart like spears, but it had grown strange during its long exile, blind and savage, in the darkness to which it had been condemned. And its appetites had grown powerful and perverse. The guests of the feast had noticed the absence of their host and the maiden at first, untroubled, they grew anxious as the hours passed, and finally began to search the castle. They found the dungeon at last, and a most dreadful sight awaited them there. The maiden lay dead upon the floor, her breast cut open, and beside her crouched the mad warlock, holding in one bloody hand a great smooth shining scarlet heart, which he licked and stroked, vowing to exchange it for his own. In the other hand he held his wand, trying to coax from his own chest the shriveled hairy heart. But the hairy heart was stronger than he was, and refused to relinquish its hold upon his senses, or to return to the coffin in which it had been locked for so long. Before the horror-struck eyes of his guest, the warlock cast aside his wand and seized a silver dagger. Vowing to never be mastered by his own heart, he hacked from his chest. For one moment the warlock knelt triumphant, with a heart clenched in each hand. Then he fell across the maiden's body and died. And that's the story of the warlock's hairy heart. And in traditional style with these fairy tales, whether they be from Grimm's or from the Wizarding World, dark with a very strong meaning at the end. Don't ever forsake your heart. Listen to your heart's desires, and do not be afraid of what your heart feels, for you may fall victim to the warlock's hairy heart should you ever try and hide from your heart's true intentions, your heart's feelings. And I will see you next time, in the next video. Cheers.